Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today's Monday, June 26, 2023. I hope you had a good weekend. Mine was somewhat uneventful. I did some homework as it relates to a specific pipe that emits sort of like a steam looking substance into the air from not only Panther Creek, but also the third plant, which of course Stronghold Digital Mining ultimately did not acquire. However, it's still a really useful analog when sort of like trying to understand in more detail what happens at these power plants. And so there will be a forthcoming episode of O&M. I thought it might drop over the weekend, but I just need to do a little bit more homework. So we'll leave it at that. There is some electrical storm activity in the air, so if you hear the loud crackle of some thunder, that's what's going on. Anytime there's inclement weather like this, I become a little bit leery. Last year, in early June, Panther Creek experienced an issue for, I don't know, it was like 8 to 10 days or so because of a thunderstorm. I'm saying this off of memory. You'll have to look at the 8K for the specific wording. But there was like a tree fell on a power line, if I recall correctly, and so that it created a bit of an issue. And the good news is I think we were able to get that handled fairly quickly. But again, I'm saying this in a somewhat of an ad-libbed way. If you want to search the 8K record, you'll see all the details. But anyway, anytime there's a thunderstorm or bad weather, I'm always a little bit leery. Speaking of just 8Ks, generally speaking, I don't know if you ever feel this way lately, where you see that there's an 8K and it's like for a split second, it's almost like your heart stops. You're like, oh my gosh, or at least this is how I feel sometimes. And I'm like, okay, let's hope that this isn't anything bad or too bad. Hopefully, if anything, it's something that's just neutral to perhaps even potentially slightly positive. So, just wondering if you ever feel that way. I know that's something that I sometimes deal with. But anyway, let's put up the slide. Okay, so you'll see this is in fact a 72-hour average. So this goes from last Friday at about 3:30 in the afternoon till about 3:30 in the afternoon today. So from June 23rd through June 26th. So PJM Penelec, average grid price of about $30. PJM PP&L, average grid price of about $21.70. Now the really critical numbers are the following. Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour, BTCMW. The 3-day average has been $91.33. Bitcoin spot price, 3-day average, $30,548. And perhaps most crucial of all, the network hash rate has remained reasonable in the sense that, okay, the average was, 373. Back to me now, please. And, lately, as in today, I've actually seen that network hash rate jump up into sort of like the low to mid 400s, which definitely has an impact on Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour. So I think lately what we're really seeing is a situation where, hey, if the price of Bitcoin remains in that $30,000 range, the real variable that we need to pay attention to then is the network hash rate. I did take a quick look and I did see that in Texas, there would be some very warm weather this week. I'll have to look to see if the heat index is anticipated to rise up, well over 100 degrees. I think it was at 125 at various points last week, which thus precipitated a lot of Bitcoin data centers, sort of like curtailing their operations just so that the grid in Texas could distribute that electricity to where it was needed most, right? To keep people, comfortable and safe, given, the extreme temperatures. So, we'll see what happens this week. I'm very encouraged, by the way, by what we're seeing insofar as the price action of Bitcoin. At one point, I do know, as you know as well, right? We sort of touched $31,000 per coin. It could be, don't want to jinx anything, it could be that we're really starting to create a sort of like a fresh foundation upon which, after maybe a period of consolidation, we might actually see the price of Bitcoin take its next step forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops, as I'm sure you are as well. I'm cautiously optimistic that my plan to speak with our friend Tim, whom we have not had on this broadcast in quite some time. He's been in Europe traveling. He's now back here in Pennsylvania. And so he and I have a number of things to discuss that I think are really relevant to some of the conversations you and I have, as it relates to, hey, what are some of the catalysts at this point for Bitcoin going higher? Needless to say, right, there has been a fresh application to have a Bitcoin ETF by a fairly large United States-based asset management company. Needless to say, the SEC, right, has in the past not taken very kindly to these sorts of applications. However, this particular application does contain a couple changes which could potentially usher in an approval, which, if that were to be the case, I think there's an argument to be made that that's going to be a very positive catalyst for the price of Bitcoin. As for our stock price, the market has not officially closed yet. It looks like as of roughly 3:48 this afternoon, we were trading at around $4.13 a share. Again, at the end of the day, our stock price is going to kind of rise and fall with the proverbial ocean waves, right? We're sort of like in this ocean of data, right? We're in this ocean called, like sort of like a data-driven stock market, so to speak. And the data that I'm referring to has more, I think, to do just with like global data. It feels sometimes as if though algorithms govern the fluctuation in stock prices. I'm not entirely convinced, based on the 72-hour averages that we just discussed a moment ago. I'm not convinced that there's any material reason why our shares would necessarily be trading a bit lower than they were last week. So again, it's one of those things where, as I've said a bazillion times before, if we take care of operations on a consistent basis, if we can turn the corner on being cash flow positive once again, and then hopefully stay cash flow positive. And again, some of this isn't entirely within our control, right? We can control our costs. We can't always, if at all, control grid prices, nor can we control the price of Bitcoin, and we certainly can't control the network hash rate. But hey, if we get a reversal, as we seem to be getting in one or both of those revenue inputs, we are structured as a company, right? Stronghold Digital Mining is structured as a company to be the recipient of some really, really great math, right? The math is going to really work in our favor as those input variables continue to improve. So I think that if we're able to print some reasonable results, not only for Q2 2023, but certainly for Q3 2023, I think that's going to be really critical. We are, of course, going into the warmer season, so it's plausible we might start to see average grid prices spike up a little bit. But I have noticed that there are times where grid prices can become astronomical, even like over the weekend. It's not for very long periods of time, but to the extent we have our power plants running, we can very, very quickly divert from sending the electricity we produce to the data center. We can divert very quickly to selling that electricity to the grid, and to do so for some very useful revenue, to say the least. So, okay, with all of that said, I hope you're having a great day. Let's stay positive, let's be great, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.